And it really is a marriage. You're getting involved with this other person on a level that goes beyond just, we're going to make a cool game, or we're going to, make people's websites. You're tying yourself to this other human being financially. So you really need to know who it is you're getting in bed with. Maybe an old friend of yours, but do they have bad credit? Do they have old debts? What are their personal habits? Do they miss meetings because they were out the night before getting wasted? Can they keep up with what it is you want to do? And what are your expectations for the company? In my experience, and I find that it's best to have a partner who has a skill set that complements yours. If you're a good writer and you're a good planner and proposal maker and project manager, and your partner's a good writer and proposal maker and project manager, well, how does that work for you? I've found, the ideal situation happens when you have a certain skill set, your partner has a completely different skill set, and you can make those things work together. It's a really good idea to also, at the very outset of everything, the very beginning, make out a sort of, not responsibility list, but a sort of like an argument list. If there's an argument over some specific thing, who gets the final say? I mean, it sounds silly, but it's destroyed all sorts of partnerships and companies that, just people I know of. So in any given area, you need to have someone who can, trump the other partner and make decisions and things. That would be my biggest piece of advice when starting your own business. That and try to keep your
I started up Immersive Realms as an S-Corp, partially because I fund my company by consulting still. I started out in corporate America. I've been there for like 12 years consulting in various industries, from healthcare, higher education, finance, banking. I've been in quite a few different industries. So I figured like gaming can't be that much more different than any of those industries, because the bottom line is you're making software, right? I'd say I'm partially right and partially wrong on that. There's a lot more creative aspect to gaming than there is to banking. I'd say so. The creativity levels, unless you're, I don't know, you're trying to fudge some numbers or something like that. But anyways, so that's the approach I'm taking right now to fund my project and bring in outsourcing. One of the other things that are really important too is it is important to have a lawyer to do things like helping you copyright some of your artwork, copyright some of your works. You can even patent some of your gameplay. I don't know if you can really patent some of those ideas. If it's really concrete stuff, you can patent some of that stuff. It's very important to do that, because then anyone can just come in here and pick up and steal your idea. And it's kind of like I think it's a slippery slope, because there's how many Diner Dash clones out there?
Well, that's the thing about patents too. Like, even if you patent something, it's
not
up to you. Yeah,
right.
it's up to you to enforce the patent.
Right.
I mean, people can walk all over you if you can't afford to actually sue them.
Exactly. So it is important to have a lawyer from that standpoint, and also for advice if you are going to make a game and you're like, hey, am I infringing on any patents? Is there anything that I'm stealing from someone else that I'm not aware of? Like, maybe when I'm forming my company, maybe there's another company that already has a name out there that's similar to mine. I get that. I've actually seen that happen at a startup company. It was Clear Crossing, and there was another startup company called Clear Cross, and we wound up suing them for, like, I think it was $200,000 or something that we settled out of court for. But that's an example there where it's important to have some legal advice. And then in terms of accounting, I have a really, really good accountant. It's very important. If you're an S-Corp, for example, there's this thing called flow-through taxes, where it's not I don't want to say like a whole, it's like Robert Kiyosaki from Rich Dad Poor Dad, but there's a lot of stuff that you can deduct that you normally couldn't if you were W-2 or an employee somewhere. So like I needed to buy a whole new computer system. That's fully tax deductible. And you take clients out, or paying for this event, for example, that's fully tax deductible. So that goes off my books. It's very important to have an accountant from that standpoint to save money. So that's my take on accounting and legal practices. I think these guys said well for the escrow. I don't know what else to say about that.
Let me add one thing. Yeah, it's really, really important to have a good accountant. A good accountant can, save you a lot of money, save you from headaches, and save your ass. It's really, really, really cheap. Get a good accountant, become friends with them, take them out to dinner, because I think they're more important than a lawyer. But I mean, I haven't had as many public legal.
And they're really not that expensive. If you think about the bottom line, at the end of the year when you file your taxes, they'll save you 5 figures, and you wind up paying them 4 figures. So 5 figures versus 4 figures. So it's not, I think that's totally worth it.
I should probably also add that the reason I picked an LLC versus file paperwork once a year. And that's just, they send me a letter that says, are you still your company? Sign it, put the check in, and I send it off, and that's pretty much all of my legal obligations to the state. It can be a bit more complex, but I haven't made a lot of decisions that required me to have minutes written down, but that's about it. I think with an S-Corp, you have quarterly reports and...
They're all similar but different. I guess that's kind of worse description.
Basically, since I'm by myself, it's better to have something that's really simple to run. But if your company's a little bit bigger, maybe an S-Corp.
If you're like by yourself, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a license, but probably S-Corp might be a good route. But if you're going to have partners, it might make sense to have an LLC or a C-Corp possibly.
Yeah, with an LLC, generally speaking, you're able to bring in and bring out partners and issue shares. A C-class company is actually publicly traded, to the best of my knowledge. So if you have a C-class company, you're talking about stocks that you're actually going to be selling to people. So probably most of us wouldn't be that.
By the way, LLCs can go public too. So if your company's an LLC, if you did want to go public, you can go public. It's just a different type of filing.
And as you can see, it's really complex.
Yeah, if we can do it, anything.
Actually, we might put something up on the website about some experiences like that to help them know.
I just went to mycorporation.com and said I wanted a corporation, and it came in the mail 2 weeks later, and that was pretty much it.
It's nice and simple.
If I had to do that, I would have had an LLC. I would have had to file a little less paperwork. But
I think the same for me too. I've probably done LLC until that's cool.
What do you guys think in terms of when you should take the step to form an entity? I mean, a lot of guys have games or groups have games going. They're working on a game, they want to start showing it to people.
I think if you have partners right away, if you don't have partners, you can wait until right before you show it to somebody.
I mean, as opposed to working on the game, you should work on this.
Well, it's not what I would call time consuming. It literally took an hour or two to set it up.
It's like a day out of the year.
Yeah,
I do have an accountant, by the way, so that I do agree with. It's really easy to just give them your books and say, okay, now don't make me go to jail.
Well, that's the thing too. I mean, the tax code is so unbelievably arcane. I mean, beyond the, I filed a 1040 easy or whatever. I mean, if you really want to start, making deductions and looking at stuff, I mean, there's all sorts of, just depreciation alone. I mean, I do not have time to figure out what the depreciation over the next 15 years of my, MacBook Air is going to be today. He does. So that's really funny.
And from my standpoint too, anytime money gets involved, it's probably best at that point in time to start thinking about forming a corporation as well. Especially when partners are putting a significant amount of money together.
What's the basic reason for forming a corporation?
Liability protection.
Limited liability protection and the tax benefits.
And on an emotional level, I would say greater legitimacy. I mean, it's kind of like marriage. Like, what's the point of marriage? We've been going out for 6 years. It's like you're sort of combining your resources into something bigger than just yourself or yourselves. If I go, hey, I'm this guy who makes websites. Hey, I represent a company with people and things behind it. It adds to your legitimacy. I would say on an emotional level, both for yourself and others.
When I started, I remember being really, really afraid of software patents because there was a lot of news about that. And it's still a problem if you want to develop software, you're worried about landmines because all of a sudden you find out that Midway owns a patent on ghosts, like in Super Mario Kart racing. There's just like stuff like that. If you implement that in your game, you're violating the patent. Well, great. So I was actually really afraid. There was a point where I was concerned about actually going into the game industry just because, that's just way too much to be afraid of. But then I was talking to a bunch of people and looking into it, and then I found out, okay, fine, I can do this. But at the same time, I can't just go into it as myself because that's just still way too scary. So having limited liability was actually kind of nice because the most anyone can do then is sue my company, and anything I own personally is separate from that. You can have a business that's not like you can have the sole proprietorship or a partnership, but if you do either of those, your liability is ultimate. They can go after if they go after your business and there's not enough there to cover whatever cost they decide they get to own. they go after your personal stuff. So having limited liability is a big, well, it's just nice to feel that you can protect yourself behind your company.